Okay, we're live. I'm Johnnie Walker Dread. I want to thank everybody for joining in. We have a special guest tonight. Dominick Black has joined us, and we also have Neil Kernan from V Radio. So let's go ahead and do some of the introductions here. Um, Neil, why don't you go ahead and introduce yourself and tell us what you do?
Hey there, this is Neil, also known as V Radio or VTV, depending on who you ask. I'm a longtime political activist and journalist. I'm actually more left leaning on a lot of things, but a lot of my audience, however, is MAGA or right leaning because of my ability to kind of stay neutral as far as what the truth is. What got me involved in this situation is that I made a documentary called The Kyle Rittenhouse Incident back when all of this stuff initially started, and put myself at odds with a lot of people on the left because I was more interested in the truth of what happened and not in any way blowing it up in one direction or the other. That's also one of the things that kind of motivated me to get back to this. I had actually been a podcaster for many years, more during like the 2008 era, and came back to it. I was part of Occupy Wall Street, basically been involved in activist journalism for many years. But the Kyle Rittenhouse incident was one of the things that led to me coming back because there was just so much, BS being spread about it, and seemingly a true lack of interest in exposing the truth of it. I've been a little inactive lately. I had to take a bit of a break, but if you guys want, you can obviously check out my content on my channel. There's plenty of it there, and I will be making some more now soon.
Good deal. Good deal. And Dominic, why don't you tell us how the world came to know who you are?
Well, pretty much, the Rittenhouse stuff had happened, and I came into play basically just about with the gun. I was there with him the whole time, took him home, met him at the police station where he turned himself in, and the gun that he had used was in my name. So that's kind of how the whole situation came about, including
Um,
me.
kind of broke up there. Can you just repeat that last thing you said?
Yeah. So what really involved me is the gun that he
Mhm.
had used was in my name. So that's what had dragged me into the middle of it mostly.
I see.
Right.
Let me ask you a question about that. What was that ride home like after the shooting with you and Kyle heading back? I mean, was it like dead silence between you two? Were you talking to each other? What was that like?
Yeah, I mean, for the most part, it was like just dead silence, like you said. The beginning, I had a lot of questions because I was pretty confused. All I got was a very short phone call about what had happened, and as soon as we got in the car, I asked my questions. Now, I'm just trying to find out, what happened. Is it self-defense? Because he's scared. He's like, "Oh, I'm screwed. I'm gonna go to prison for life. This and that." And based on what I'm asking him and the answers I'm getting, I'm telling him, I'm like, from what you're telling me, you're innocent, but you've got to turn yourself in, And after that, it was just dead silence. We both were kind of just, mind blown. Didn't expect any of that to happen.
Did you think at that moment that not only could you be in trouble maybe with the law, but what your parents were going to think?
Oh, I don't know if I was more
I mean, I
scared of
would
my
be terrified
parents
of
or
my
the,
dad.
I don't know if I was more scared of the law or my parents. No,
Yeah.
honestly, it didn't really cross my mind at the time that, I would be involved legally. I was more concerned for Kyle's sake, but then to later find out that I would be dragged into it as well.
Man, I tell you what. Anyway, let me introduce myself. I'm Johnnie Walker Dread. I host the Johnnie Walker Dread show on the Johnnie Walker Dread channel, and I came into the whole Kyle Rittenhouse dealio not long after it started. At first, I just heard the news that some right wing patriot, MAGA, white supremacists had just gone to a protest and started shooting people. And so I kind of stayed away from it because that sounded like horrible news. I didn't want to even believe that it happened. It wasn't until later when I saw what happened, I thought, oh my gosh, I had it wrong all the time. And of course, you are a victim of the media that you get, the news that you get. It shapes everything that you think. And the misinformation was everywhere. And then one time I saw Kyle in the interrogation room crying, and I said, I really need to look more into this situation. So about it wasn't too long. Well, I guess maybe a few months before the trial, I was hosting a show, and your mother put into the chat something like, "Hey, I want to get a hold of you about something." So I communicated with her, and then later we got to talking, and we have been in, I wouldn't say constant contact, but regular contact pretty much since then, including after the trial. We've we've kept in touch with each other, and I will say this: everybody focused all their attention on Kyle and kind of completely forgot about you. And in fact, I think that some of them were really even hostile to you because Saint Rittenhouse was in trouble, and all they cared about was getting Kyle off. And I was trying to tell everybody, hey, there's another person who's a victim here. And you were facing what, 16 years total at one time?
I want to say 12. Each charge was carrying 6 years, 2 Class H felonies.
Well, you'd know.
Yeah,
Right.
yeah. It's a scary number to think about.
Right. And then Tim Pool produced a show where he just absolutely butchered you. The guy's an asshole. Okay, I'll just say it. And that's when I started putting out videos dedicated towards getting people to understand what you were facing. And there was my group that understood that, but for the larger part, there was Kyle and his minions. I don't want to denigrate them, but they pretty much never warmed up to you because they saw you as someone who was testifying against him. And you want to talk about that at all, about the whole thing about getting on the stand and the testimony, or do you want to go there?
Yeah, I mean, realistically, like I didn't have a choice, so it's either, I fight it or they're going to subpoena me regardless. From my eyes, the truth didn't hurt him. It helped him, but a lot of people didn't see it that way. I don't know why. It's unfortunate. I didn't have any intentions of, hurting him in the case. I didn't want to hurt him, just as everybody or most people believed he was innocent. So did I. So I just got up there and I told the truth. Like I said, I I really didn't have a choice. So I wasn't against him ever.
Mm-hmm. And by the way, I should mention, Binger, after on that BBC documentary that you participated in, he admitted that he didn't get out of you what he wanted. And in fact, he said that if he could only have gotten you to say what he wanted you to say, he might have been able to get a conviction. I don't think so. But, because in his mind, he was that close to getting old Kyle nailed. He was never close. He was in serious trouble from day one. But I think that what he was wanting, and I've had I pushed out a couple of videos on this. What he wanted you to say was, I saw Kyle pointing his rifle and threatening people. And he really tried hard to get you to say that, and you didn't.
Yeah.
And
So
nobody credited you for that.
yeah. So right beforehand, right before I went on the stand, he had pretty much told me. I sat down with him, and he was like, "Look, I need you to go up there, and I need you to bring up the video that I've given as evidence." And, the whole time I'm just scared, I don't even want to go up there. And I'm just like, okay. I got up there and he's looking at me and I'm looking at him and I'm like, you know what? I'm not going to do that. It's wrong. It doesn't prove anything. It's like, I'm not going to do that. And by the time my turn was over on the stand, I could tell he was furious with me.
Yeah.
You
Yeah. Well,
but
at one point, he asked you the question twice because he was so taken aback by your testimony.
yeah. No, I just couldn't go through with it because I know the judge would not see that video as having to do with anything that went on in that night. That video's in the past. It's not like he was planning on coming down there. So in my mind, I'm like, this video is really just going to make him look bad for, it doesn't prove anything, and to just go out there and it's, I had the option to say it about the video and I just didn't want to do it. It wasn't a good idea. There's no reason.
Hey, I want to take a second and acknowledge one of our favorite guests is in the chat right now, Nathan DeBruin, aka Photo Chad. How's it going out there, Nathan?
And by the way, I have invited him to come on. He's sick and he thinks he might be able to come on. He's not sure. So you might see him later tonight. He's been on my show a few times, and I think he has shown up on your channel before.
Oh, yeah, several times. He's a great guest.
And I also invited Grambo to come on, but I haven't heard from her back. I mean, we'll see.
Okay.
All right. So let's see here. I got a question here. I kind of jotted down some questions for you here. You know, Kyle, after the trial, as far as I can tell, he's kind of living it up, right? He's getting up in front of fans. Not all of them like him, right? And he seems to be a little bit scared at times, but for the most part, he seems to be almost enjoying this. And he's been, you know, if you saw him, I'm sure, get on the stage there where they had the fireworks going off and everybody squealing.
Yeah.
And but you played it under the radar after the trial. You didn't do any interviews. You didn't do any of that kind of. You want to talk to me a little bit about how you decided to handle not say the celebrity status, handle the publicity after the trial?
Yeah, I mean, I really have no desire to, you know, be in the spectacle of people's eyes 24/7, you know. I kind of just wanted to move on with my life. What happened wasn't something to be happy about. There's nothing to celebrate, you know. I mean, like I celebrate that we got off scotch-free almost, you know, aside from, you know, a lot of people's negative views and perspectives on us. That was probably the biggest outcome of it. And it's not something that I want, you know, people seeing about me every single day. So, in my opinion, I don't really think that, you know, getting on stage and doing a million interviews and all this is really worth the hate that it's just going to generate. Because if you do that, people are never going to forget about you or what you did. You know, whether they view it as good or bad, it's just pointless. Because I don't know. Me personally, I want to live a normal life, and I don't want to be that guy going on stage and living it up and just doing whatever I want, thinking I can walk on water. You know, because I can't.
Do you get do people put your name to the Kyle Rittenhouse trial? Do they make that out like, oh, Dominick Black, are you the one?
Yeah, actually, I mean, I don't live in Wisconsin anymore, and I moved about 12 hours away. And surprisingly, yeah, I didn't expect it. You know, I'll meet new people, and they'll stop and look at me, and most of the time, it's, you look familiar. I've seen you before. And then give it a day or two, they come back to me. They're like, oh my gosh, you're so and so, and I'm like, ah.
So you don't record, but do they treat you pretty well once they find out who you are?
Yeah, I mean, just talking to people, you know, I mean, everybody can have their original view and opinion on me, and that's fine, you know, but at least, you know, if you're going to have some opinion that's negative towards me, at least get to know me first, you know, and usually that's what'll happen. And, you know, I make friends with these people because everybody's going to have an opinion. You know, nobody really knows the kind of people that me or Kyle are until you meet us. Same
I
with
think
anybody.
it's the same thing with their family. Like when we were interviewing them, is that what Johnny and I were trying to do was actually make Kyle's family into human beings to the audience, because a lot of people tend to forget whenever you have a situation where it's like somebody has turned themselves into a celebrity or something, you tend to forget that's a real person over there. Like, you know, they have
Right.
feelings, they have family members, they have their own life going on outside of, you know, whatever it is that made them interesting to you. You know, like people tend to forget that you guys are real people.
Yeah. I mean, this was like you know, this took years out of our lives just going through this. It's why drag it on anymore? You know, it's over with. Let's just move on. That's the way I see it. Go on with my life. I don't want to spend my whole life dwelling on what happened, or, you know, people attacking me or making claims against me for what happened. Like this happened a while ago, and it's just going to get older and older and older. There's no point in continuing it.
Grambo says hello in the chat, by the way.
Hey.
Right. And is that your mother also in the chat?
I'm not seeing the chat.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, he probably won't unless he hits comments,
okay.
and he's probably only going to see one of our channels at a time too.
Kenosha Cat.
Yep. Yeah.
It's probably
no, Kenosha Cat. I thought that was one of Kyle's sisters. I thought.
Oh, maybe you're right. Or you're right. I have invited Kyle's sisters to hop in and say hi, but I haven't seen them come in yet. So we'll see. And So you have actually stayed in contact with Kyle's sisters throughout the time and his mother, right?
Yes, yeah, we talk probably almost every day, if not every week.
When you must have been, facing the 16 years or 12, sorry. You must have been terrified. I mean, I would be absolutely terrified of that. I mean, what was you thinking? I mean, what was it like?
It was scary, it almost felt just like unreal. Um, I tried as much as I could to really just take my mind off of it because there's really nothing you can do about it just besides waiting, and I saw this massive amount of support Kyle was getting, but the support I had, I had some good support, but it wasn't Kyle Rittenhouse status support. So I did feel a little scared, and I did feel like if anybody is gonna get the short end of the stick in here, it's most likely gonna be me. Um, Especially with Kyle's trial coming first, and then he beat it, and I'm like, all right, I'm next up on the ringer. I'm like, they're gonna throw everything they have at me.
Right. So Kyle gets the gun charge gets dropped. Okay. That must have been a pretty big feeling of relief from you.
Yeah, it was, but I mean, yet again, I'm still young, but I was younger then, and this is the first time I had ever really ran into trouble with the law. So I was very unfamiliar with the law. As much as people had told me, "Hey, it's a good thing his gun charge got dropped," so that really correlates with yours. As much as I wanted to believe it, I just didn't know because in reality, I'm still facing 12 years. And as soon as his got dropped, mine was still there, both of them.
Mhm. But all of Kyle's fans must have rallied to your defense at that point, right?
Yeah, I mean a good amount of them. Yeah, I was really
Well, it's
surprised.
good. I'm glad.
Yeah,
Um,
yeah, yeah.
but did you at some point kind of feel like neglected? Like, okay, Kyle's getting all this publicity, he gets all these people defending him, and there's almost nobody on my end. And you mentioned you had some support, but did you kind of feel like really isolated at that point?
I mean, yeah, a little bit, but I kind of wanted to keep my eyes open. It's like, I'm not really the main person in this case. I didn't actually shoot anybody, so it was understandable. You know what I mean? I was really behind the scenes, just with the smaller charge that led up to the big scene that happened. So I didn't really expect as much support as him. I didn't make the news nowhere near as much as he did. So it was understandable. It wasn't a good feeling, but we got past it.
Okay. I want to take a moment here. I'll tell you before I do. Hey, Neil, do you have any questions you want to ask him?
Um, could you go ahead and take a moment, I guess, and elaborate on how your friendship with Kyle went from being close to kind of disintegrating over all of this? Like, what was the transition like?
Yeah, so I mean, it was really close at first. I mean, he'd come over to my dad's house and he'd stay the night. It even came down to a point where he had gotten a job in Wisconsin, and him and my brothers, we were all really close. Almost every other night, just spending together at my dad's house. We were pretty much brothers. And then what had happened, and we were not allowed to have any contact. And the only thing that I was hoping is like, I really hope that he hasn't forgot that we're pretty much brothers through this whole thing. Um, Once it had ended on both ends, so my charges got dropped, his did. There was a FaceTime call that me and him had, and it really wasn't how I expected it to go. It was more him like, "Oh, look at where I live now. Look at this. Look at what I got." And I'm like, "Oh," I'm like, "Okay." Like I was more expecting like, "Where are you? Let's get together. Let's go grab something to eat. We got to catch up." But it wasn't that, and that really caught me off guard. I wasn't expecting that. So ever since then, it really fell downhill. We ended up meeting up again, and I went to Florida for my 21st birthday to see him, and it was good. It wasn't horrible, but he had brought his girlfriend with him, and that was where majority of his attention and time went, and that kind of stirred the pot with a lot of things. And ever since then, we have not talked.
So, my next one would be, what was your opinion and or interaction with? I'm gonna feel bad for forgetting his name now, but the guy that was his handler, who what former Navy SEAL or whatever, who was like supposed to be handling all of his security and was like intertwined in all of
Dave.
his that's the
Dave
one.
Hancock. Oh man, I've got bad and good emotions about him. I've heard some really bad things, and I don't like the way he goes about things. In a few ways, I kind of see him as, I don't want to call him a scam, but he's done some very snaky things that I would not like to see anybody else go through. And
Right.
those things really affected Kyle's family, not just Kyle. Um, I think Kyle was an easy target for people who would want to, nab some money or some fame off of, and he definitely fell for it. I never got involved with him, thank God. But
Do you go ahead.
no, you're fine.
Do you think that Kyle, how did Kyle change before and after the trial? I mean, did he change his personality and like that?
Yeah, I mean, he loved the attention. It definitely changed him. He loved it. There wasn't a bit about it he didn't like. It sucked to see because, I'm watching him change into this person where he thinks he's like a superhero now, and he's not. It's just a tragic situation that happened and he took it the wrong way. He's just milking it. And I really didn't like that. He just became really selfish, neglecting his family and especially his friends, and just kind of going on his own journey that, we can all see that it's eventually it's going to come to an end and he's going to have to realize his mistakes he's made after the trial.
So another one, if you guys don't mind. I was curious, and this is kind of going back to the night in question because it's something that has still confounded me, and through all of my investigations, I've never been able to get like a handle on it. But I remember on the night in question, there was video of what looked like somebody, didn't look like you, but somebody firing their rifle around the same time that Kyle was doing what he was doing. And the impression I kind of got was almost like they were firing to cover or maybe to draw attention away. But when you watch the final actual like shooting, like right after he's rolled on the ground and had to defend himself, as he's walking away, somebody is firing their rifle. Do you have any like impressions on that? I mean, I don't even know, where were you physically at that point of the shooting?
At that point of the shooting, I was still on top of the building. At that point of the shooting, it was a little bit after he had made that phone call to me.
Okay.
I didn't know there was somebody else shooting another rifle.
Okay. Yeah, it's
Yeah.
audible in all the video, but we never have any idea who the hell did it. And nobody's been able to give me like that video clip that I had of somebody firing a rifle around that time. I've never been able to find it again. It's one of the things that led to me. It was actually in the beginning of me investigating this issue before I decided to make my documentary about it, and I was never able to find it. But so many clips went up on Twitter that night, and that was one thing I've never been able to get to the bottom of. But somebody else was firing their rifle, and I don't think they were trying to hit anyone. Like, that was my impression, was just like, they knew people were chasing Kyle and they wanted to get attention away.
The only other gunshot that I know of is Zeminski shooting the handgun right before Kyle started shooting. That's all I'm aware of.
Okay.
I just want to make a statement here, just quickly. I'm having computer problems that are very intermittent. So if all of a sudden it all disappears, it'll take me about 2 minutes to get back in. So just hang tight if that happens. Okay. I wanted to also take a moment, since people are listening, I wanted to clarify the whole thing about the legalities of the whole gun purchase thing. And you can correct me if I'm wrong, Dominic, but you bought an AR-15, and then after the purchase, Kyle gave you money. And the whole idea was that once he turned 18, you would do a legal transfer of that rifle to him, but not until then. So the gun was always in your name. You had the receipt for it, and you didn't give it to him. Okay, now I want to make it clear that even if Dominic had bought the gun for Kyle, that doesn't violate state law. In Wisconsin, I can buy a gun for somebody else, no problem. And whether it's a federal crime or not, that's a different issue, but it's certainly not a violation of state law. And that's the reason why you were never charged with anything having to do with the purchase of the rifle. And everybody confuses that, because your charges were having to do with allowing Kyle to have possession of the gun that night.
Right.
Okay.
Yeah. So
Okay. I want to make sure everybody understands that because there's so much misinformation about that's going on. And quite frankly, if you look at the actual facts of the case, there doesn't appear to be any violation whatsoever, federal or state. I'm going to make a claim right there. So, okay, I just wanted to kind of get that out because this is a good time to do it. Let's see here. Let's see. You know, with Kyle getting all that, does it bother you to see Kyle like getting all that celebrity status? Doesn't it bother you, like, like, how come I don't get anything? I mean, I'm the one that paid. You didn't even shoot anybody that night.
yeah,
Right.
I mean, yeah, I mean, it doesn't bother me. I don't want that celebrity status. That doesn't upset me at all. I just don't like how he's using it. It makes me angry because I knew who he was before it. And to see him using, if he wouldn't have shot those people, he wouldn't have any of the friends he does now, you know.
Oh
And he
yeah.
doesn't recognize that. It's just the sole fact that, these people are in a way using him and he doesn't want to admit it. He doesn't want to see it. And I just don't like how he's using that to the best of his capability, because at some point he's going to want to move on from this and he's digging himself a hole he's not going to be able to climb out of.
I think that's been kind of my inclination about it as well. Like when he blocked me on Twitter, I just kind of thought to myself, I was like, there are a whole bunch of people that did a lot of work to keep you out of jail. And most of those people are not the people you're giving your attention to right now. And if for some reason he had gone to jail, none of those people would be around right now. It would have
Right.
been Wendy and his sisters would have been the only people bothering to come and see him in jail, make sure he had everything he needed. And those are all the people at this point that effectively don't exist in the situation,
Left behind.
and I never like there were a lot of times throughout all of that people were begging me, hey, where can I donate to your efforts? I was like, no, send it to Kyle's defense fund and all that. All I ever looked for out of any of this, and when I was talking to Hancock about it, was I'd like one interview, and that was it. And that never happened. And Hancock basically told me, well, because he wanted me to go after Lynn Wood for him. And when I refused to do that was basically the end of me ever having any possibility of ever interviewing Kyle Rittenhouse. And the reason why I didn't is that I didn't really understand all of the complexities about what was going on with him and Lynn Wood. And Lynn Wood was extremely kind to me, for being a far right conservative guy. Like, our conversation, which you can still find on my channel, went extremely well. And he and General Flynn shared that link, which led to me getting a lot more subscribers, and I never got anything but positives vibes from the guy. I've been since told that he's kind of shifty, but it doesn't change the fact that he was extremely kind to me, but that was kind of my impression of it, is just that there were a lot of people who did even more work than I ever did. Like that Orkanaut guy, geez, that guy, the stuff that he did was absolutely ridiculous. He's got every stream there is all simultaneously on the same channel, same videos where you can literally watch every single angle of it in real time. He's got a full timeline, all that stuff. Honestly, that kind of work, if it wasn't done, because the people who took those videos of Kyle that night did not have his best interest in mind. Most of them were taking those videos because they wanted, the right-wing element that night to get in trouble. And if we didn't go through and sift through everything to account for where he was and what he did, he very, very likely would have went to jail. And honestly, if this crime, quote unquote crime, had happened 20 years ago before everybody had a camera in their hands, he probably would have went to jail. And that's the only part about it that I just think that, that's just like, as far as my personal element with it, or people like Johnny, or people like, that have done this kind of work about him, that none of us basically exist anymore. And he's spending all of his time with like the higher profile people who already didn't really need his help, as far as getting attention, and like you brought up Tim Pool earlier, Johnny. My problem with him is that guy has a huge subscriber base, and most of it is, content of him reading other people's articles and then giving clickbait answers to it. As far as actual real investigative journalism, nothing even closely resembling what you and I used to put into our time. I would get up at 9 a.m. and then make a video and not be done until 9 p.m. That was what my days were like during all of this going on. But anyway,
Well,
back
and
to
our
that.
subscriber base, by the way, are pretty we have a pretty intelligent audience, very reasonable, rational. They see both sides of things. Tim Pool's subscriber base are a bunch of morons. I mean, they remind me of Rashad Ritchie's, just on the other side of the spectrum, right? But we interviewed Kyle's mother and sisters, and before the interview, you told me you realize that Kyle's going to block us for this. And I said, yeah, and he did. But we did. We did the interview anyway. We didn't care. You know,
right. Well, that's because at the end of the day, I was just loyal to the truth. Like, and I've told people this before, and I think people are starting to get it, was that what Kyle did, I understand why he did it. It's not something I would have ever advised my 17-year-old son to do. I don't think it was wise. But I do think that the characterizations of it that came out after the fact were all just ridiculous, and people just wanted to see his blood because they didn't want anybody daring to stand up to rioters at that time. And, but in the interim, that, kind of getting back to my point was just that I feel that, I mean, it occurs to me actually, as you guys were talking about it, I was thinking to myself, we're talking about like celebrity status. You remember what his Twitter used to say was like, I'm just trying to be famous, yo. Like that was before anything had happened, right? This is just like, that's before he did anything. And yeah, well, you're famous now. I guess, my question in the long run is going to be, what is going to happen to him when this is no longer something that benefits him, and when he's not being invited to the White House to talk to Trump anymore and all of that. And, will all of the people that he alienated through all of this, the people that would have been there for him, whether he was famous or not, that he doesn't talk to and or help, will any of those people come back into his life and take him back? And I imagine they probably will. His mother and his sisters are very caring, but will he actually deserve that loyalty? I guess time will tell. I know that like when you and I, as a couple of small YouTubers have to basically do a telethon to help his family because he can't be, bothered to do it. That seriously still irritates me to this day.
Right. The telephone was very interesting. I got a private message from Kinsey, Kyle's sister, that they were facing eviction and were actually getting evicted. We went ahead and did a telethon for them to raise some money, and then Newsweek got a hold of it, of the actual, our show, and then made a big deal out of it. And all of a sudden they ended up with like $9,000. They were trying to raise like 3,000. Sometimes it pays off, but you talk about the people who put their efforts in. I have over 400 videos on Kyle Rittenhouse. I have thousands of hours invested in trying to see that he gets a fair shake. And in the end, it didn't do me any good. He blocked me anyway. So he separates everybody into, heroes who love me and everybody else, right? And since I don't worship him, I'm on the outs, but I don't care. And someday he'll look back and he'll see that it was, he was being very immature about it. And then if he wants to give me a call, maybe it was in late 20s or something like that, I'll meet up with him and see if we can work things out for him. But until then, forget it. I'm not worried about it. So let me go, Dominic, you have a new family. Why don't you tell us about what's happened over the last year or so?
Well, I moved away from Wisconsin. It took a lot of work. I left Wisconsin. I moved to the East Coast, and I met this woman, and we had a son, and I also have a daughter now. And I'm married. So we're both working full time and just raising these kids, doing the best we can. It's not easy.
Can you tell us what you're doing?
Yeah, so right now I'm working in the automotive industry. I'm doing like auto glass, so sunroofs, windows, you name it, electronics.
And you were working in the home construction business at some point?
Yeah, at first I moved out here and I was doing remodeling, mainly like on the plumbing side, so bathrooms and kitchens, and I was liking it a lot, but the pay just wasn't there, so I kind of just tried to transition to something that had more pay.
You've been called back to Wisconsin. Do you want to tell the audience what that's about?
Yeah, so I'm on an interstate compact, pretty much saying like, okay, you're on probation for a crime committed in Wisconsin, but we're going to allow you to live in another state. But I had failed a urine test for alcohol, and it's my fault. I made a mistake. I understand that. But what I didn't realize is that that cancels the interstate compact. So because of that, I'm ordered to be back in Wisconsin. And realistically, it's okay. You know, we were planning on going back there anyways, just for family. It's unfortunate that we have to rush it, but it's just a situation we're in, and gonna have to live with it, move on with it.
Now, there was something also about um, you were supposed to report to your probation officer and didn't, and you were like dismissed from a program. Can you clarify what that's about?
Yeah, so with the missed appointment, it was a complete accident. I totally forgot about it. I was actually at a funeral for a coworker of mine. He had passed away from 2 heart attacks in one night, and then he was in a coma and he passed away. And the funeral was actually like a week after that, and I honestly didn't know funerals happened that close to a death. So I was at the funeral when I was supposed to be meeting with my probation officer. I completely forgot about it. I should have texted him. It's not like I was, avoiding him or anything. The urine tests don't even take place at probation, so I really had no reason to not go see him. It was just I just purely forgot about it. I was tied up with a lot of things. And then I was in this class, so I could pretty much take my urine tests. And there was one instance months ago where I had failed for alcohol. And I think it was really just me missing that appointment with him that kind of set him off. And he's like, you know what, I'm done with this. And he reported it to Wisconsin, and they just ordered me back.
Okay. So you were tested how often? I think it was random, right? Was it
Once a
random?
week. Once a week.
Okay, once a week. And
Yeah.
so, and I know that you were on this probation for about 2 years. So you failed one drug test in 2 years for
Yes.
alcohol.
Yep.
That's it?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, and I've got
You know,
11 months left.
yeah, okay. So that doesn't seem like much to me. I mean, really, alcohol, as far as I'm concerned, alcohol, who cares? I mean, maybe yeah, it's a probation violation, but it's
Yeah.
booze. I mean,
Yeah, I shouldn't have done it, but it's not like, I'm not out here doing, hardcore drugs and, causing a lot of problems with people.
okay, we might have a question here. Let me read it first here. You know what that's about?
One second, let me read this real quick. I don't believe that's in order. I think Kyle is talking about pretty much when I got word that people were starting to smash the cars and attempt to light them on fire. And that's when Kyle had went over there to stop it. And that's when people started getting upset and Rosenbaum started chasing him. I believe that's what he's talking about.
Oh, okay. And I mentioned to you on the phone, I don't know, that was like 2 or 3 nights ago, that I watched the BBC documentary. And by the way, I would show it, but I'd probably get a copyright strike immediately from it. It's the BBC. And during the show, of all the people they interviewed, you seem to be real unsettled, like there was something brewing. What was that experience like with the BBC, and is that accurate? I mean, how were you feeling?
Yeah, I mean, that was the first time I was back in Kenosha, and especially in that certain area. We were actually filming only a few blocks from the shooting. Um, that was the first time I was there, and then they're asking me a lot of very deep questions that, I really do try hard to avoid even talking about. And it's at the point, where it's like, okay, um, I really don't want to answer these questions, but I'm here for a reason, I'm going to share my side of the story. It was just really uncomfortable, and it was just bringing up a lot of memories from that time that I had forgot about, really, or at least tried to, and it was just really overwhelming my mind.
What does the future look like for you? What are you planning? I mean, you got full-time job, right?
Yes.
And your wife is working, but you have a
Right.
family.
Yep. Yep.
Where are you going? What do you see yourself doing if all things work out great in maybe 5-10 years?
Well, I mean, we've got the kids, we've got the dogs, but we don't have the white picket fence in the house yet. So I guess our main goal is really just to work and buy a house and go on from there. We don't really want to work forever, so if we can figure out one way to get rich and be entrepreneurs, that'd be amazing. But as of right now,
Well, I
we
got an
really,
idea. Like, what you should do is write a tell-all book about all of the deep, like, personal details of, of your friends and family's lives, because I heard that worked out great for Kyle, and
oh
The
man,
amount of money he's making off that must be immense. I can't believe it.
oh
I
man,
think I calculated at one point that he was making maybe like $500 a month or something like that, and that was when it was going good.
right?
So yeah, I
and
mean,
obviously I'm being sarcastic, but
Yeah, I mean,
obviously, hey, you know that if you ever want to write a book, you know the guy who can do it.
right. Yeah, I mean,
um,
have you had? I assume you guys have a copy. You see how much
uh,
he's charging
I
for?
have a digital copy because Kyle sent me the book because he wanted to know what I thought of it, because he was catching heat from Mackenzie and you know Faith about the book. And so he was like, I don't understand what's wrong. So he sends me a digital copy of the book, and I read it, and this was on private message, and I sent it back to saying, Kyle, you can't say these things. And he said, well, I don't understand. I didn't say anything negative. I said, Kyle, I mean, really? And I think that was probably the last time I ever spoke to Kyle. And
Yeah.
the book was terribly written. He hired some guy who writes newspaper articles to write a book. That's death. I
Yeah.
mean, the writing styles, I mean, that just does not work at all. And you can tell it reads like a newspaper article. And I just thought it was terrible. I told him that, and he didn't like it when I said that. And then we did the telethon for the girls, and he blocked us both at that point.
Yeah, I've got a close friend who's an author, and I kind of got his opinion on the book, and he bought it. And when he first opened the package, he was like, "I can't believe I paid this much for such a crappy, soft cover book." And then he read it and told me he wishes he could unread it.
Wow. That may be the most vicious takedown of a book I've ever heard.
He really did not like it, and he's pro Kyle, so
Yeah. Well, and let's not lay this on Kyle's steps. The writer
yeah, the
did.
author, 100%, yeah.
Yeah. I mean, let's see here. Like,
well, the part that I got to lay on Kyle is that he had to know what was going in there that didn't need to be
oh,
in
sure.
there.
Yeah.
And that's
Yeah,
like
he
that's the one
definitely
time I
approved
got
it.
to confront him, was I had to pay for a super chat on Rakita Law's stream to confront Kyle about that. And he's like, "Well, I think I have a right to tell my side of the story." He just did his best to avoid my point, which was, why did you feel compelled to talk about your sister and mother's personal lives? Like, what the hell does that have to do with it? He could very easily have just written a book about that night and nothing else, not his impressions of his mother's like dating habits or his sister's dating habits or any of the other garbage that he put in that book that just didn't need to be there. He could have sold the book solely talking about that evening and not dragged his family into it, and not given all the people that have been harassing his family for years now more ammunition to taunt them with. Like, that's the part that I can't handle it. If I ever met him in person, I'd just be like, dude, what the hell? Like, that this is way out of control.
Yeah, I mean, I really think that he just, like I said, people use him a lot and he doesn't see it, and in his eyes, he's like, oh yeah, I'm writing a book. He doesn't care anything about what's in it. That part goes right over his head, I think.
Right. Well, he's still pretty young. It's like I
Yeah,
said, it's going to be something he's going to look back on later on in life, I imagine, when he gets some wisdom and goes, man, maybe that wasn't such a good idea. But
I hope so.
yeah, I hope so too.
let me ask you a question, Dominic. I mean, is there anything about the trial and your involvement in it where people make claims that just really bother you? Like, I can't believe people say this. Like, you hear lots of people talking about it, especially online. Is there
Yeah,
something there that you think like, oh man?
the biggest thing, it's not so much about me, it's just the fact that people keep saying he went across the border, and did this. That's what irks me so much, because they really, when somebody says that, it just shows me how much they really didn't look into the story, and they're just making assumptions, and they think they know all of the lines and everything that happened. That's the part that, if I meet you out and you tell me that, it's just like, I don't even want to talk to you about this. It's just like, go online and read some more before you even want to have a conversation. I've heard enough. That's the biggest thing that'll get on my nerves.
Is
Okay,
there
Neil,
any?
go ahead.
Is there anything else that like you still read to this day? Like, because I on Twitter I'm constantly involved in this, but like any huge misconceptions that about what went on that night, or maybe anything that you would want people to know because you so rarely ever get spoken to on this topic in a situation where you get to be free to be, whoever you want to be in the situation. Is there anything that you've wanted to say or want out there that has never come out before?
I don't believe so. I mean, it's just a key factor that everybody knows. This isn't something we just, plan to do weeks ahead of time. This is kind of really just a spur of the moment thing with no ill intentions. It just kind of happened, and we really had, good intentions of just stopping the violence that was going on and, helping people. That was really all we wanted to do, and it just went south, which is unfortunate.
Right.
You probably weren't allowed to listen to the testimony of the car source owners, but afterwards you must have seen it. What do you think of that?
Oh man, they, oh, I've never heard so much lies on stand. It's just when I saw that, it just blew my mind. Like every 5 minutes, I'm like, this guy's lying. This guy's lying again. He's lying. I've got a picture that proves him wrong on this one, and they got to fly with it, and that's what really bothered me because they're under oath. So I just don't understand how somebody could lie so much on stand to cover their own butts. It's just mind blowing.
I can tell you why, and I actually did a video on this. Um, they, the real owner of that car source was their father, and I can almost guarantee you, that father told those boys, "Don't you dare say anything on the stand that hurts my business."
Oh
And
yeah,
so I kind of sympathize with them a little bit because they were between a rock and a hard place. Because if they got up there and they say, "Yeah, we hired them," um, lawsuits would flow in, and they could even be facing charges. So I totally understand why they lied.
yeah.
But I was just kind of curious. But you must have just been, now you didn't get to see them actually testifying, right?
No, I did not.
Yeah, because that would not have been allowed. But what were you thinking? I mean, was it like total shock or what?
I really didn't expect it, honestly. I was hoping they went up there and confirmed a lot of key facts, and they didn't, and I was just dumbfounded. I'm like, what? Like I did not expect them to get up there and literally lie about every single aspect of it. It just I was really speechless.
Uh, by the way, we do have Grambo in the chat. Ann Fiedler, she was a witness there that night. Grambo, because she talked about carrying her gun and she used some real salty language on the stand. You didn't know her at all much. I mean, you obviously had met her on that day because you were guarding the same property, but you didn't really know her, right?
No, no, not at all. I mean, at that point, she was just a stranger.
Mm-hmm. What'd you think of her testimony? And keep in mind, she's listening.
I thought her testimony was badass. No, it
That's
was
a good
awesome.
word for it.
Yeah, no, I think that's really what stemmed to build, the relationship with her and our family now.
Sorry, guys.
And I will say this. I think it was her testimony is when the first time Binger thought, "I'm sunk." I think at that point, he realized that his chances of nailing Kyle to the wall were pretty much over.
Right.
And first of all, your testimony set the stage that things were not going to go well, right?
Yeah.
And then Nathan gets up there and basically just skewers his, fellow ADA in a totally vicious way. So at that point, Binger had to been kind of feeling like this is just not working out. And in fact, this is starting to get a little embarrassing. And then she goes up there, and I think at that point he thought, this is not going to help. I've really made a serious mistake in doing this.
Yeah.
Yeah, let's see here. Longi, I hope I'm pronouncing it right because I think I pronounced it Longi before and he corrected me. TV adds 10 pounds. Was James Krause really that fat? Well, James was there when you were being examined. When you were being questioned, right?
What do you
I
mean?
think he was there through the whole trial.
Yeah, I believe so. Yeah. Yeah. But in Binger, when he's questioning you, what did you think of him? What's your overall impression of Binger?
Oh, I do not like him at all. Oh my gosh, man, he just makes me mad, and then I see him waving the gun at the crowd, and that just what a mess. What a mess. I mean, I'm happy he was the DA on the case, to be honest with you, because somebody else could have done a way better job than he could have.
Well, I'm telling you, the district attorney there is not chopped liver. The real district attorney, not the assistants. I forget his name. I've done a lot of videos on him. He's a hard left. In fact, I have exposed text messages between him and one of the local political activists that are pretty eye-opening. It's in one of my past videos, but he's no Mike something. He's no Shrinking Violet. He's good. And if Kyle had ran up against him, he still would have been acquitted, but it would have been, you wouldn't have seen the total lunacy that Binger brought to the table.
Yeah, I mean, how do you build a case against somebody that's innocent, really? It's just, it's not really possible. I mean, especially with all the video footage and evidence there was, it's just crazy that, in my mind, that nowadays there's supposed to be a trial for something like that.
Do you ever go back? I'm sorry. Do you ever go back to Kenosha? Do you ever spend time there?
I wouldn't say often. Sometimes I do, maybe once a year, just to see family, especially with the kids.
Right.
I definitely don't go there to, have fun and hang out with all my friends or anything. It's more family than anything, but maybe about once a year. That's it.
Do you think, I assume Kyle probably never goes there anymore, but is there still like a leftover attitude about that night in Kenosha? Like, do people still talk to your family about it or whatever?
It's really in public when people run into you. Then you'll get those confrontations where, people will say something to you. I can't speak for my family. I don't think any of them really were plastered on the news like I was, but I've definitely had some confrontations with people where they were not happy to see me.
Right.
But most of the time, I really try my best and just, keep an open mind and try to get them to keep an open mind and just talk about it. Because in all reality, I feel like a lot of the people that are really negative towards it just really don't know the facts, or they don't know exactly what happened or what kind of person I am or what kind of person Kyle is. And it's really best just to, hear their side and at least let them talk and hear what they got to say or why they think what they do.
The lack of knowing facts and the lack of interest in facts is something that still confounds and frustrates me to this day, because there's a certain way they want the narrative to be interpreted, and then they become immune to facts at that point. Like, one of the videos that I have on Twitter that gets shared a lot is an excerpt from my documentary where he is actively giving medical attention to BLM rioters after immediately being pepper sprayed, as in immediately after being pepper sprayed, because the attitude is always he went there with a gun to kill people or whatever. It's just basic little things that people still don't know. And it's been, how many years are we going on now, Johnny? Like, this is what, 2, 3, 4, right? And they still don't know that stuff, and they don't want to know that stuff. That's really what bothers me about it. It's just kind of the nature of politics in general right now. It's one of the reasons, sorry, I had to take a bit of a break, was that it's a little blackpilling how little people are really interested in the truth. It reminds me of something that Yuri Bezmenov, this KGB defector, once said during one of his presentations, was that, once a society has been demoralized, real information no longer matters to them. They don't really want to know the truth. And when you share it with them, they might get quiet for a moment, but it's very rare It's a very exceptional person who will text me privately, generally, never publicly, who says, I reviewed what you said and I've changed my attitude about it. Because
Yeah.
they're expected to have a certain partisan perspective on the Kyle Rittenhouse incident, facts be damned, and it goes both ways. Like there are people that didn't appreciate that I, took Kyle's family side. I'm like, well, too damn bad. Like, the kid was wrong, period. I know it's like I told you guys this from the beginning. I'm not into this for like, one side or the other. I was into it for the truth. But anyway, sorry, go ahead.
Well, and the other thing is, I have videos covering just about everything. There really isn't much of the aspect of the whole shootings deal that I haven't covered. And so someone will make a mistake and I will say, in this video, you can see right there that this person is saying such and such, and they'll come back, I'm not going to watch some video, with only 18.
YouTube is your source. It's automatically wrong because it's on YouTube and doesn't agree with me.
Here's the person talking on the video, disputing what you're saying. Don't you want to learn? The answer is no, they really don't. And by the way, Blue Sky is far worse than Twitter when it comes to this.
I believe it.
And let me say this. I mean, you can support Kyle and you can support Dominic and still be leftist. There's nothing about what, guilt or innocence of the Kenosha trial that forces you to have to rethink your entire worldview.
That was one of the big revelations from our interview with the girls, and was that like they were Bernie Sanders supporters.
Like, you are too.
Right? Yes, I am, or I was, or I'm still reevaluating. But at least for from that time period, that's why like I put a picture of my ballot up at the beginning of my documentary because of the fact that there were so many people that just believed I was some crazy right-wing conspiracy theory nut. And I'm like, dude, you guys obviously don't know who you're talking to because that ain't me. Point is that it's become so partisan that the truth and you exposing it becomes something that makes you bad. That's what malinformation is supposed to be. Yes, what you're saying is true, but it's not beneficial to us. So you should stop saying it, is the attitude they have. And they picked the wrong guy if they thought that's what I was going to do. But despite the bizarre caricatures that supposedly Wendy and her daughters were like super right-wing MAGA hat wearing conspiracy nuts, like both of the sisters, I believe, said they were Bernie supporters. So, but they didn't need that. They needed this narrative of like trying to convince us all that there's this huge fascist white supremacist movement out there and it's a big boogeyman and it's trying to take over the country and you better watch out for it. And so anytime they get an opportunity to try to make that look like it's actually true, then they jump on it. And that's more or less what they were hoping to do with Kyle Rittenhouse.
Right.
Going back here, there's a question that went through the chat here. Let me see if I can pull it up. Oh, it was about Ryan Balch and all that. You didn't see, from your vantage point, you didn't see the events unfold, did you? I mean, you talked about the chase, the ambush, and the shooting and stuff.
Yeah, no. So I was about, what was it? About two streetlights over. So I didn't see anything at the other lot. Yeah. The last thing I could see was the corner gas station next to the car source that I was standing on. So I saw him pretty much running back with his hands up after all the shootings had happened.
So I don't know if you want, this was something I just came to my mind, or you don't have to answer this or not, but the whole thing with the plea deal, do you want to talk about how that transpired?
Yeah, I mean, pretty much, what was the plea deal, man?
Well, you had 2 felony counts, and that was reduced to a traffic.
Yes, okay.
Basically,
it was reduced to pretty much it was a county ordinance ticket for contributing to a minor. And realistically, it was Binger just admitting like he had no case. He's like, the gun charges had dropped for Kyle. And this was like the day of, my last court date. And my lawyer looked over to me and he told me what was going on. And I'm like, yes. Because it's the lawyer's job not to give me any false hope. So I don't know what's going on. I don't know what to expect. But the minute he looked at me and he came and told me what was going on, I was so happy. And I signed that ticket so quick.
Well, wait a minute. So you're your lawyer, the story I heard, and I think I got this from your mother, was that your lawyer met with Binger over lunch, and they went through the statutes to look for something that Binger could offer as a face saving deal. We got him for something, right? Because his entire case against you completely evaporated, and the reason why was for the charges against you to stick. Kyle's possession of the rifle had to be declared as illegal, but the charges against Kyle were dropped. So all of a sudden, poof, gone.
Yeah.
At the same time, you're still out on bail, and he could threaten to appeal any decision by Schroeder against you. So he could have kept you out on bail for another year.
Yeah. Yeah.
And then also you have to pay your lawyer for a year. I think it was like $15,000-$20,000.
Yeah, I think it actually was $30,000 for him.
Mhm.
You know, and I'm surprised he didn't, try to go through the whole appeal process, especially after I didn't do what he wanted me to do on the stand. Because my takeout from that was Binger's pissed. He was mad at me for not doing what he asked me to do. And, I didn't know it. In my head, I was like, I just dug myself a hole. I really just screwed myself over on that one.
Did you ever have any interactions with the Zeminskis before that night? Like, are they a known quantity in Kenosha? Do people know who they are? Like, I guess probably now they do, but maybe before this, because that guy's record was so ridiculously long, you'd wonder if people if he had a reputation or something.
Yeah, I mean, prior to everything happening, believe it or not, I had no idea who he was. But I'm surprised I didn't, after finding out who he is, and what he's done and how extensive his criminal record is. I'm surprised, I haven't heard, people talking about him or anything that he's done.
Yeah, that's
actually probably a good thing that you don't know him, right?
Yeah, but I mean, yet again, Kenosha.
Said, yeah, I knew old Zeminski. I went out with him all the time.
Yeah. But I mean, yet again, Kenosha is a big city. The county's huge, so there is a lot of people there. It's not small like most people would think.
So, well, it's interesting to look back on that now, especially with how all that's finally played out at this point. But his role in all of this is still so underplayed, and it's amazing to me, for example, that they charged Kyle with some kind of reckless. I used to have all this stuff memorized. It's just been too long, but it was basically an endangering people by firing his gun. But nobody ever charged Zeminski with that, and his gun firing was what set off everything.
Right.
So it's in fact, the total lack of, they weren't going to go after him for anything other than arson. It's interesting because eventually it all came around, because then they decided, wouldn't it be a really great idea if we went over to some guy's house and kidnapped him and made him give us his money?
Yeah.
I'm just this whole thing could have been prevented if you had prosecuted these two freaking idiots years before that. And the other thing is I had stumbled on it, and it's been taken down, but there was an article that at some point Kelly Zeminski got in trouble. This was way before any of this, but for leaving her kids in the car while she went in the store. And, it's stuff like that. That's why I was curious. I didn't realize how big Kenosha was. For some reason in my head, I thought of it as a small
about 100,000, isn't it?
Yeah. So it is pretty big.
Yeah. Hey, we have Kinsey, by the way, in the chat. That's Kyle's sister. Hey,
What's up,
Kinsey.
Kinsey?
and you communicate with Kinsey all the time.
Yeah. Yep. Yeah, I do.
Mm-hmm. Okay, so I have a question for you here. If JoJo had not shown up that night, what do you think? What would your life be like? That you ever thought about that? Because you were wanting to go into the Air Force and be a pilot, a commercial pilot.
Yeah.
What happened with that? And what role did the shootings play in all those plans?
You see, so I was, fresh out of high school. So, my goal really was to join the Air Force and then just go from there and, hopefully become a pilot through the Air Force, or do anything around planes in the Air Force that, benefit my chances of being a commercial pilot. With all of that happening, obviously, I really couldn't go into the Air Force. 2 pending felonies, they wouldn't take me. And then by the time it ended years later, it's just, I'm already working, I've already got a kid, and it's just at that point, not really possible. So it kind of killed the whole dream of being a commercial pilot.
That's unfortunate, but I'm glad to see that you have a stable family life now. I just hope it all works out for you.
Yeah, no, I'm happy now.
I've always wanted to write article or something, or maybe I should do a video on the damage that one certifiable loon can cause to so many people. But Jojo Rosenbaum ruined a lot of people's lives and cost them, a couple of them, their lives, well, including his. I just am astounded how much damage a one man can do in one night.
And when I thought about when I researched his past was like, you got to wonder about all of his victims from before all of this, the 5 boys between the ages of 9 and 11 years old that he violated, like trying to keep your YouTube channel fresh here. But anyway, in a horrible, evil way, like to have this guy plastered all over the place after that, you got to imagine that the kids who went through that he targeted have got to be like, why are people walking down the street with this guy's face over their heads? Like that was one of the and they had big signs with his face on it, like he was a hero. Him and Huber were both like upheld, like they were amazing. And it's another one of the examples of things that bother me about how the left does things now, is that violence of that kind, of the sexual nature, is this evil, terrible thing that people should be ruined for, unless for some reason, that person happens to align with us on other political issues. So they, I've still got pictures of them holding up this guy like he was a hero. But again, imagine what it'd be like if you were one of his victims from his previous stuff. And that was another thing that, I remember looking back on all this, is that the fact that they all tried to defend him or say that it was false that he had done any of those things. I'm like, well, get ready to look at some public records here, pal. But anyway, sorry guys, I'm just kind of mulling all of this over. It's been a while since I went this deep onto this topic, so things are just kind of coming to the surface.
Yeah, and by the way, it's brought up a question here about Yellow Pants. I'm not sure what you Yellow Pants, obviously we kind of know who he is, but can you answer her question?
Yeah, let me read it. Yeah, I do actually. Yeah, that was scary. So the whole time, we're there, I really wasn't thinking anything bad was going to happen. I thought, the people are going to pass and they're just going to see us and they're not going to, mess with us or mess with anything at the dealership. And then the minute I saw that guy, tinkering with the cars and jumping on them, that's when I was like, okay, it's just got real. That was kind of an eye opener and realizing what I've gotten myself into.
Do you have any clue as to what the exchange between Kyle and Yellow Pants was on video? I mean, it's hard to kind of make out, but it sounds like he's accusing Kyle of basically telling him to get off the car and then patting the AR as in like, and if you don't, I'm going to smoke you. Do you know anything about that?
No, unfortunately, I don't. Most of the time, I really wasn't paying attention to Kyle. I was just kind of looking out just to make sure everything was okay. Like I said, there was a lot going on. There was a lot of people, so my focus was kind of just everywhere.
Yeah, and a lot of people will make a lot of claims about Yellow Pants, but Binger didn't bring him in as a witness for a reason. And if he really had testimony that could have helped, screw Kyle over, he would have been called in, because it wouldn't have been hard to figure out who he was. But Binger didn't bring him in. So evidently he didn't have much. And I'm going to stake that claim down.
Right.
Go ahead if you have a question, Neil. I'm going to look through the chat to see if anybody.
That's fine. So I guess looking back on this, has this situation and the way that it changed, obviously your life and your family's lives, would you say that your political leanings personally have in any way been impacted by this experience? Like, has your philosophy about life changed because of this experience?
It's a tough question. brutally, I mean, I guess it has kind of pushed me a little more to the right. Only really because the sole fact that if it wasn't for the right winged people, I would kind of be sitting in prison right now, for something that shouldn't have
Right.
even, for something realistically that wasn't even illegal. I guess I'm just kind of grateful in that sense, but I've also met some people through this that have, been there for me when I need them the most. And I've learned a lot from them. Pretty smart people, impress me every day. So I guess I definitely leaned a little bit more right after everything, but I did in the beginning anyways. I wasn't some big, you know, Trump guy or anything like that.
And
Not to hear the public tell it. According to the public, you and Kyle, man, you were just attending all the Trump with your little red caps on and wanting to deport everybody.
Yeah.
I
No,
mean, because
I've never actually been to a Trump rally in my life to this day.
and they
so
are incapable of understanding that not everybody is politically driven. They can't get that because this is projection, classic projection, because they are politically driven. They can't understand how somebody could not be. So when they see Kyle and you, they think, well, they must have very strong radical political opinions, left or right, and they're certainly not leftists. Therefore, they must be MAGA. And they just cannot understand that not everybody sits out on the fringe.
And so another one I wanted to ask you was because in the end, this case was largely a Second Amendment case, like as far as like self-defense and the right to carry, and which I might add, I am a rare left-leaning person who's extremely pro Second Amendment. I'm actually like, there's a carbine under my bed right now as we speak. But like, has this in any way impacted your feelings about who should have guns, when they should have them, or like, should Kyle or somebody his age be allowed to have a gun in retrospect? Like, has it changed your thoughts about the Second Amendment at all?
I don't think so. I totally agree with, if you should have the right to, bear arms and possess a weapon until you ruin that right. If you do something that makes your right to own a gun, a concern, then I think it's 100% fair that that's taken from you. So exactly how it's written right now, I know a lot of states are different, especially the one I live in now, the very anti-gun. But yeah, I guess, I kind of stand with the law on it.
And if that's something that still confuses me to this day, was that somehow it was not illegal for Zeminski to have his pistol. Like that it was like he was not in any way being charged for that, and that apparently he was allowed to own it. And I'm like, how does this even happen? Like, he's walking around brandishing a pistol with the record that he has, but at the same time, everybody was obsessed with like Kyle having a gun. Gage Grosskreutz was also not supposed to have his gun at the time, but he did, and nobody cared about that. He's illegally carrying a life rifle across state lines, is the obsession. But anyway, it comes back to what some of the things I said earlier about how partisan everything is. It's okay for Gage and Zeminski to have weapons when they shouldn't. It's not okay for Kyle to have a weapon when they believe he shouldn't, et cetera, et cetera. But anyway.
Yeah. What about Crystal Kaiser?
I didn't actually look at that case. You were kind of the expert on that one, and I was busy at the time.
She actually got a gun, a handgun, totally illegal, and then Ubered 45 miles away to kill a man. And she's in illegal possession of a gun. And according to her, supporters, well, the gun's not a big deal. I mean, it was self-defense. I mean, the illegality of the gun shouldn't have any effect on self-defense. Oh yeah, well, what about Kyle Rittenhouse? Oh, that's different. Their inconsistency is their game. Oh, by the way, Ann says, he said, this is talking about Yellow Pants here. He said Kyle pulled a gun on him, and Kyle said, I did. And yeah, that much is clear. He didn't. I was holding Kyle's gun when Yellow Pants was on the car. That's really important for everybody to know.
I remember
Okay.
her bringing that up when we talked to her, actually. So yeah, and I remember the clip in question pretty clearly because he was like, "Weren't you the guy who told?" Because like he was offering medical attention if anybody needed it. He's like, "Aren't you the guy who pulled his gun on me the other day?" or something like that. Yeah, it's just another example of a model citizen who is out there, having his quote unquote peaceful protest all over everybody else's property.
Yeah, I don't want to cut you guys short, but I think I'm gonna get off here so I can make it to work in the morning.
And that's fine because I think I've ran through all the questions I wanted to ask you. How about you? Do you have any last questions there, Neil?
No, just wanted to take a moment, Dom, and thank you for coming on and talking to us, and I mean, it's been a while since I look back at this, but having a conversation with you and getting the opportunity to humanize you as well in the eyes of people who never got the opportunity to just listen to you being a person was part of one of the few check boxes that I hadn't finished. So
I appreciate it. I appreciate both you guys taking the time to talk to me.
Yeah. Thanks for coming on. I appreciate it.
Yeah, of course. Thanks for having me.
Okay. Take care. And
All
I
right.
tell you what, Neil, why don't we just go ahead and talk a little bit longer here? But
yeah, sure.
you're probably getting a little tired yourself. I can go all night, but I know that I think you kind of have to turn in pretty soon, don't you?
Not necessarily, but I can talk for a little bit. I wouldn't mind talking to my audience anyway, since I haven't spoken to them in a while and they're on as well. So,
okay, 1 second here. I'm going to get. Oh, okay. I think I'm showing. Okay, there it goes. Okay, so he finally logged out. Wow. Well, we finally was able to get a Dominic on, and I, by the way, it's Dominic, but I've been pronouncing it Dominique a few times. Sorry, Dom. It's
no,
like, this is his mother's fault. You should know better than to name your kid something that's easily feminized.
right? I was like, don't misgender him now. You're going to trigger the leftists.
But we've had interviews with Kyle's mother, his two sisters. We had Anne on a number of times. We've had Nathan, another witness, on a few times. So we've actually had a large part of the trial here on the show. I think that's really great.
Yeah, that was actually something that occurred to me was I forgot to ask us if he's had any contact with like Ryan Balch or any of the other guys that like I would have liked to have interviewed Balch, but I never got that opportunity. But there were YouTubers who did.
Yeah.
I
remember telling you that I was trying to find Ryan and we came up empty. We can't get a hold of him. I don't know where he is.
He probably doesn't want to be found at this point. Maybe he's trying to move on, but I don't know. I look back on this every now and then. And I think that it's, I can't help myself. You see me on Twitter. Sometimes I'm still, getting into it with these people because it still drives me crazy that people pass around misinformation about it. But I still do get occasionally messaged by somebody who will say that they watched my video and it changed their opinion. But, in retrospect, though, looking back on all of this and all the work and all the time that we put in, speaking of which, actually, when was the last time you heard from our friend over in our Czech friend, Logical Checkmate? When was the last time you heard from him?
I sent him an invitation to the show, and I actually even asked if he could co-host on it, but I haven't heard from him. He's like 12 time zones away, and he has kind of moved on from the Kenosha thing. He's really heavily involved in the Ukraine war, and he even has Ukraine refugees living with him. So I think his intention is really more on other things right now. But yeah, you're right. You're talking about Logical Checkmate, Paul, and he was a fierce defender of Dom and Kyle's throughout the time.
Right.
And it's really great because he comes definitely from the left side of the political spectrum and from the Czech Republic. I got to be careful. And yet he knew, 5 times more than the average American about what happened, because he bothered, he did some research.
Right. And I got contacted by somebody who said they were working for a company in England that was making a documentary. I don't know if that ended up being the BBC documentary or what, but he was interested in hearing the whole story, but he was hoping I would get him in touch with Wendy. And, I think that's the main reason he was talking to me. But I took the opportunity with the leverage that I had, that he wanted something from me, to have him watch my video and some of your videos, and, you know, just to try to get to the bottom of it, because a lot of people in Europe still don't really have a full understanding of what took place, and they're going to get whatever their specific, you know, version of the media is going to feed them, you know. But it's interesting, looking back on it, and just, you know, some of the other friends and enemies we've made along the way, you know, like Gage Grosskreutz still occasionally comments on my videos.
Right.
And for all of the talk that he has of me being irrelevant or whatever, he still can't seem to keep himself away from me. And then the bizarre interactions I had with that Hancock clown, and, you know, and stuff like that. But in the end, I'm still glad that I did what I did. I'd say that it's frustrating sometimes that it feels like playing whack-a-mole, honestly. For every person you set straight, there's like 6 of them, 7 of them, 8 of them, you know, 10 of them or whatever, that are still spreading bullshit about this. And, you know, again, that's why I had to take a break for a little bit, because I used to put ridiculous amounts of time into researching videos. As another one, like, you know, I think I've told you this, but like, we brought up Tim Pool, I kind of like rolled my eyes, because I'm like, this dude, like, this guy does nothing. And like, just one day he let it slip, because there was like a fight going on in his camp, like between different creators, and like one of his channels makes like $10,000 a month. And I don't do this for money. I never did, but it is kind of a slap in the face that this guy basically makes all this money and has all these viewers for really just not doing anything himself. I mean, I guarantee he's never sat around watching entire live streams to get 30 seconds of Kyle walking across the street with Ryan Balch. You know, like, you know, he's never done any of that hard work. He's never, you know, and yeah, and some of the streamers that were out there, you know, risking themselves, I could see why, you know, they deserve some respect, so to speak. But so I've done that, and that's kind of harrowing. But at the same time, you know, none of those people would have been helpful to him, you know, if he was guilty. So, no. But anyway, but that's one of the reasons I've been kind of taking a break, was that I realized that I was putting a huge amount of time into this, and I needed to, it was causing me also to neglect other things going on in my life. And as a result, you know, I needed to dial it back a little bit for a while, but I'm back now. Most of my early afternoons are pretty dead. So the likelihood is now is I will be most likely trying to pick a regular time, most likely in the early afternoon, probably noon Eastern time, to do a stream just to talk about current events. I still get people who, you know, ask my opinion about the election, and, you know, a lot of other things, you know, because I'm the left-leaning, you know, content creator that they listen to, despite any differences we have on other topics, you know, things like that. You know, people still want that. And I also still have Patreon subscribers who've been dutifully donating this whole time, even though I haven't been doing anything, which I feel bad about. But hopefully them getting this interview with Dominick Black will help pay them back some. Because the money's been very helpful, because I'm still on a limited income. I'm still disabled, and although I'm a lot healthier than I was, my spine is actually in more pain now than it was before. Basically, I'll get this feeling as I'm walking around that somebody's taken like the blunt end of a screwdriver and driving it into my thoracic spine, which is weird, because it's actually my lumbar spine that is damaged, but for whatever reason, the pain is in my upper middle back. But anyway, and I know you've been plugging away this whole time, and keeping up with your work. I mean, think about it. Some of the other creators, like Strategic Eyes, just became a true crime guy, and I don't know why, but that's all it took. Now his channel's taken off, because he doesn't talk about just random stuff like you and I used to, and you know, and that seemed to do the job with him in the YouTube algorithm. And I'm very happy for him, because the work he's doing is
He's a good dude.
I just miss the reasons I used to turn into his channel, was that he was kind of like us, you know. It was just, you know, and he was a very good orator, and he still is. It's just that the true crime stuff is something I kind of have to be in the mood for, whereas, like, you know, back in the day, I could always turn on his channel and enjoy listening. I still interact with Neo Unrealist quite a bit. They actually accidentally put him back on YouTube. I don't think they realized what they did, but he came back for a while.
Whoops.
Yeah,
You
because
had who back on?
yeah, no kidding. But that was Neo Unrealist is one of the first YouTubers that I got into, and he still talks to me a lot on Twitter. But it kind of slowed him down for a while, which is too bad. It's another guy I really enjoyed watching. But anyway, just kind of going down the memory hole of all the people that we talked to and befriended through all of this. I still get some of them. My Discord channel is a lot quieter than it used to be, but I still get activity in there. And Winning Reality, he's always posting links to his show on my channel and stuff like that, and that's great. He's a good guy. But so how have things, I mean, because you and I haven't talked quite as much lately just because I've been busy. How have things been going with you and your channel?
Well, I've got 1,874 subscribers. And you think, wow, that's a lot. No, that's for 4 years of work and over 1,000 videos. That's nothing. And I have never been able to figure out the YouTube algorithm. In fact, I was questioned tonight, why is it that some of my Rashad Ritchie videos have like 2,000-3,000 hits, whereas some of them have like 30? I have no idea. It's all hit and miss. I'm like you. I mean, I'm a full-time engineer, so I have plenty to work on. This is a hobby. It always has been. I wouldn't mind making some money from it. And I make about maybe $30 a month from, the marketing, which is, I could take my wife out for a dinner, and that's okay. I like it to be bigger, but I'm not terribly worried about it. Because if I did, I would have quit, because I don't have hardly anybody subscribing to me. And that's unfortunate, because I think I got some good content, but that's the way it is. And, I hammer the Kenosha shootings pretty heavily, but I'm also easily distracted. It's there's a squirrel, right? So I'll come across some news story and I'll just jump on it. And people don't realize that if you see a 30-minute video on my channel, that's probably 3 hours in the making, because to do a show with all the editing and stuff, it's a long, drawn out deal.
Right.
So if you see 400 videos on Kyle and Dom, can you imagine the number of hours I have poured into that?
Yeah. And a lot of the topics that I tackled were more like in documentary format. I wasn't joking when I said it would be 9 a.m. to 9 p.m. and then my video is finally done and I'm uploading it at 9 p.m. and it might even only be a 15-minute video, but that's how long it took me to get all of my research and all of my sources together. And so Kenosha Cat brings up, something has to give. Could you pay to reach a greater audience? So funny story about that involves Grambo was that I was the first person to get an offer to actually interview her, and like a bunch of mainstream media outlets wanted her at the time. And I even tried to pay for Google ads for that interview, and they denied me. They would not allow me to pay them to promote that interview. And the reason that they said was shocking content. Like, we didn't play any videos. It was just me talking to a nice lady. That was it, and they wouldn't even allow me to pay to advertise for that interview. And at the time, I was one of the only people who had talked to her. And that's why it was like, there's definitely an effort being, and that's, I've thought back about this. It was actually one of the reasons why I originally had wanted to stream this on my side, was only that I get more viewers on X than I do on YouTube. And I don't know why, but like stream out to all these other outlets, because, but in general, I often think back on this as I almost wish Elon Musk had bought YouTube instead of Twitter, because, imagine what that would be like, at this point, to have him give his treatment as far as like, freeing up the storyline, so to speak, to YouTube. I think it probably would have been even more powerful than him purchasing Twitter, but in general, but that's why I've been gone all this time. It was also just a matter of like, one of the consequences of the surgery that I got for weight loss is that I have to intake an enormous amount of protein. And when I don't, it actually has cognitive problems. Like it screws up my short-term memory. And if I'm not careful, some of those problems will actually be permanent. But one of the things that people kind of came to expect from me, from VTV Radio, is that I'm going to be this super clear-minded, documentary, logical, rational Vulcan guy. And, sometimes that's not as easy as it used to be, aside from just any post-COVID stuff. I don't know, like if you've ever felt any post-COVID stuff, but for me, something is definitely mentally different since the pandemic in just my brain's capacity to retain information. My short-term memory sucks now. My attention span is so ridiculously short. I'll go on Facebook planning to post something and then like realize, oh, I was supposed to be posting that like 3 hours ago. Just different things like that happen. And I want to be sure that I can continue to maintain the level of clarity that they're used to. And I think I've kind of figured out my protein thing now, so should be good. But those are the other things that kind of like, I didn't want to come back out here and do this if I was not going to be able to offer the same level of quality that they had come to expect. But like you said, when it comes to our audiences, the niche that you and I are in are people who do want to think. And that's not really a lot of people. Glenn Greenwald recently did a video, and he's one of the guys I pay attention to, and I don't agree with everything he says. But he got labeled a right winger. But right now, anytime Trump does something he doesn't like, he comes out publicly and says so. He's really pro Palestine, for example. That's not a right winger position, at least not from what I understand. But what he pointed out in a recent short video was that he could probably raise his subscriber list quite a bit if he would just go out there and find a side to the political argument and then stick only to that, because that's what people kind of want. Like they turn on MSNBC because they want to listen to Joy Reid, race bait, and they want to listen to Rachel Maddow and all those kinds of personalities give them that version of the story. And the thing is that Fox News people do the same thing, right? Like because the whole conservative side of this too, that they all want to do the same thing. And now I'm in this bizarre situation where, of all people, the Young Turks at this point are who I am listening to more. And like, I used to listen to Breaking Points a lot, but Crystal has become like basically what the Young Turks used to be. Like, Anna Kasparian at this point is a huge breath of fresh air. And I know that you pay attention to them because you Rashad Ritchie stuff, but like, he's still terrible. Like, I don't know how much longer he'll be on that network. Like, I'm kind of surprised he hasn't already come into conflict with Anna and Shank, but I get the feeling he's just motivated by money anyway. And if he tried to leave that network, I don't really know who else would pay him to do the garbage that he does.
Yeah, I should step in and mention that if you dislike Rashad Ritchie, boy, you need to subscribe to my channel. I don't know if you know it, but I have over 100 videos on Rashad.
Mm-hmm.
None of them are positive. I'll tell you right now.
Right. Well, you did a deep dive into that, man. There's all kinds of I always got the feeling the dude was slime, but I never really knew.
He is the slimiest person that I know. And the amazing thing about Rashad, I don't want to go too long on this, but is that there is nothing genuine about him. Nothing. He has, tweets about his daughter and how great of a dad he is, never minding the fact that he claimed it wasn't his and he had to take a paternity test to get proven, that kind of stuff. All of his degrees are fake. Everything is phony. And so I spend a lot of time on him because there's one thing about it. I'll be working thinking, okay, I'm going to cut the Rashad thing for a little while. But then all of a sudden, here comes another video where he's making a fool of himself. And I take the bait every time. So I end up with numerous videos of Rashad, and I can't seem to stop because every time I think I'm caught up, he does something stupid. And well, what can you do? In fact, I just came across another one just, like last night that I'm going to have to cover. So the guy is an idiot and a fraud, but so by the way, another person that we really need to get on the show at some point, if we can try, is Gage Grosskreutz. He had agreed to come on my show at one point. We had talked about it, but then it just was one delay after another. And maybe I took it the wrong way, but I kind of felt like he was just playing me.
I kind of hope like I didn't screw that up for you, because I think he was going to go. I just I got into it with him, and I remember Hancock was going to come on at one point too, and then I got into it with him, and then that kind of screwed up. So I hope I didn't.
Gage never mentioned anything about you, but I think he got upset because at one point I'd said, "Hey, Gage, this is one of my videos. I think it was a live stream that you're not really serious about this or something like that." And I haven't heard from him, but hey, Gage, if you're listening, if you want to come on the show and kind of tell your side of things, I'll treat you fair. I always have. And he said he would. In fact, I asked him, well, why are you wanting to come on my show? And he said, I think you'd treat me fairly. And he's right. I would, it's not going to be an attack job. No, but I just want to hear what his side says. But yeah, up until now, I haven't been able to get a hold of him.
The problem I think that would exist is that because I treat everybody fair, but he screwed up so bad, and he's still actively lying about it. He goes on college campus tours, and this I did a video about this because he's still lying about what happened. And if I was on live with him, he's not going to get away with that. And I don't think you'd let him get away with it either on purpose. I'm just saying it would be an interesting conversation, and I'd be willing to talk to him, but I don't think that it's going to go very well for him. And it's not being fair, and that's the thing is this whole thing has been about being fair for me. He basically represents the kind of person I probably would have known and befriended when I was at Occupy. But unfortunately, I still remember getting into it with him on YouTube when this all started. It's what would you have done? Well, let me tell you what I would not have done, right? I would not have yelled, "Stop him," at a crowd of people that are chasing a kid with a gun who's just trying to get to the cops. I wouldn't have done that, because you just got 5 people killed doing that crap. I mean, no, you're not killed, but shot at, That was my point about it. Is just he was such a freaking brainless idiot in that situation. And I tend to bring up that during the trial, he said that the reason he was trying to prevent Kyle from getting back to the cops was because he thought Kyle was working for the cops. He thought Kyle was shooting people for the cops. And I'm thinking to myself, this only makes this worse. So what were you going to do? Abduct him? Try to take him somewhere and make him talk about his involvement with the police. They just none of those people were really thinking that through at all. So,
yeah, I mean, I actually have defended Gage on a number of times. First of all, he's not an ex-felon or not a felon at all. He has no felony convictions. He was carrying the gun legally that night. I'm absolutely convinced of that, and Gage has kind of proven it to me. So there are a lot of times when people have kind of screwed him over in terms of the facts, and I've straightened them out on that, because one thing I don't want to do is misinform. And I've pulled a few videos off because I had mistakes in them. I remember one I had probably spent 2 hours on the thing, and then Anders, I think his name is Anders Weinstein, corrected me, and I had to pull it down. So thanks, Anders.
Well, it's good that you did that. A lot of people don't do that, but I will say that I am happy to see that the media is finally getting what's coming to them, because at this point, Tucker Carlson gets more viewers than any of the cable news networks. Breaking Points does. Young Turk's already dead. The mainstream media is taking the huge hit that is exactly what it deserves. And, public sentiment is changing. That is one of the other things that just looking at the last election, it was definitely a mandate on, we don't value what you have to say. we're going to go ahead and vote conservative now because, and I guess one of the things that I was talking to Neo Unrealist about the other day was that what's going on the left at this point is so suicidally stupid that I already kind of had a feeling when I was at Occupy that somebody was trying to sabotage the left. Nowadays, what's going on is just so outlandishly bad that any kind of leeway or work that Bernie Sanders had done to try to draw attention to things that were widely understood to be a problem, like wealth inequality or whether or not people can have health care, or just all of those things, is now just not relevant anymore. We got to talk about pronouns and trans people in sports and just a bunch of stuff that isn't really ever going to help anyone, and it just feels to me basically like as it gets worse over time, the left at this point has lost any and all interest in convincing anybody of anything, and instead you should just try to shame everybody into compliance and going along with you. And anybody who doesn't go along with that, well, you shouldn't talk to them anymore. And you should, attack their Teslas. That's so harebrained. But anyway.
Oh, Dom's mother has a question, and I think you can answer it.
Sure.
When did Gage start doing college campus tours? Is he just following Kyle around?
I honestly, I wouldn't know a specific date, but he still gets invited to college campuses to speak. And whether or not it's a tour, that might be a mischaracterization on my part. But if you look on my channel, I have a video, like it says Gage Grosskreutz Can't Stop Lying or something to that effect. And I addressed all the things he said that were blatantly false, including playing videos of him talking at the trial, contradicting the things he was saying on college campuses after the fact.
He did change his name, as Kenosha Cat said, but I don't really want to publicize the name change. I know that Kevin was all about, exposing, his new name, but I really don't want to get into that.
No, that's okay. I'll do it on my channel later. He's not really even subtle about it, though, Johnny.
No.
He goes by that name on Twitter, and he identifies himself. So, like, at this point, the cat's out of the bag.
Oh, yeah. I mean,
but
I told everybody it was the worst kept secret ever. I mean, what's the point of changing your name if you go on in front of the microphone and tell everybody who you used to be?
Right. Yeah, that's, and it's just, I get what he thought he was trying to do, but at the same time, the people who were involved in all of that, many of them will never suffer any consequences for what they did. I mean, he lost a bicep in the process, but aside from that, we saw it for how long did it take for Zeminski to get anything? Oh, well, really nothing that he did that night has anything to do with what happened to him later. He had to do something blatantly stupid for the law to finally do something to him. And there are so many other people that were involved in all of those riots, that will never see any kind of consequences for what they did. And it's unfortunate because, at the end of the day, I think that whole time period was terrible for this country. And nothing that they did was in any way beneficial, and that's one of the biggest things I was trying to get at earlier with what's going on with the left, is that there's no efforts whatsoever to try to be convincing about anything anymore. It really is just about trying to punish anybody who doesn't agree with you. And, and when that doesn't work, rather than recognizing, oh, well, maybe we should change tactics, maybe we should try to be more persuasive, then it's time to double and triple down on hatred, and then that somehow will fix it. Because apparently getting their, derrieres stomped, in the last election is not enough, and that's, anyway, but I don't want to ramble.
Well, Kenosha Cat, by the way, asked, what's his new name? I'll go ahead and say it. It's Paul Prediger, and I chided him on email for coming up with a last name that rhymes with predator. What were you thinking?
So many people say that too.
Yeah.
They all say that. Paul Predator is what they say. Yeah.
Anybody else from the trial that you kind of wish that you could, find? I like, there was that one guy that everybody mistook for Kyle, and I think that, Rosenbaum was really thought that he was attacking that dude. You know what I'm talking about?
I think I know who you're talking about.
Yeah, he's dressed just like Kyle.
He was a kid too, and then you never see him ever again. He's in that group of people who called themselves the libertarians.
I would love to interview that dude and find out believe it or not, he may have caused all this inadvertently.
Right. Well, just by being dressed the same, I guess. But it's the other thing that I would say is that's why I brought it up with Dominic to see if he had any kind of insight. But we still don't know who was firing their rifle while Kyle was backing away from the incident after he shot Gage. And there are a lot of shots that went off, and we still have no idea who did that. Like I said, I remember a video of somebody firing a rifle that was being circulated on Twitter, and it was that night. And I want to say it was one of the guys who testified, the guy who had brown hair, was
Yeah, I
wearing
forget his
military
name.
like fatigues, but like that guy, I'm
Mhm.
like, I think that's who it was, but I didn't have the video clip, so I didn't want to go spreading that around. But like, and again, he wasn't shooting it at people. I think he was just trying to get attention away. But there were so many. That's why I was going to say, as I got into the habit of, if I get anything juicy, I'm going to grab the video immediately, because this stuff, just disappears off the internet. Like, I've still got videos of that shooting in the supermarket from forever ago. Those are really hard to get your hands on now, stuff like that. And I have no intention of using it because it's graphic as hell. It basically just looks like a guy playing a first-person shooter walking around a small grocery store shooting random people.
Oh, that I saw the uncensored one, dude. That was horrible.
Yeah, it's still sitting on my hard drive. But the point is that stuff like that gets taken down and then you never see it again. That was actually another thing I thought about talking to Dominic about, was about the Darrell Brooks trial and all that insanity, and the fact that there were so many people that came out that were like, oh, this is karma for letting Kyle Rittenhouse off, oh, he must have just been defending himself when he drove his car over 40 people. And I'm just like, little kids got ran over, dude. Like, it points out, again, like I said, that the people on the internet is people. It's made up of people that are using it, but they interact in ways on the internet sometimes that remind me of like the bathroom wall. Like, you would put stuff on the bathroom wall that you may not ever say publicly.
Mhm.
Right. So the internet is like the bathroom wall of reality now. You just get to say horrible, stupid things on it all the time. And, it's one of the dangers of the anonymous nature of it, I guess. And I still think we should be able to be anonymous, obviously. But at the same time, that comes with pros and cons. And one of those cons is that people are going to fill the airways with a lot of crap. I remember back when we were doing our stuff, when I was a podcaster back in 2008, when Alex Jones was really popular, Ron Paul was running for president, like that whole time period. I remember we always thought initially, that were they going to turn the internet off? And I realized eventually, no, they're not going to do that. They're going to learn how to turn the internet into just another tool of propaganda, into just another tool of misleading people, which is exactly what they've done, which is why, like, I did a video about this specifically, which was about why were they panicking about Elon Musk buying Twitter. And the reasons why had to do with things like the Air Force actually got caught creating software that creates armies of bots. And the reason for it, meaning bots, meaning just fake profiles on the internet, was that they basically went into that project after doing more research and finding that if you can convince roughly 23 to 24% of a population of an idea, that it will set off kind of a sociological chain reaction to get that idea to be accepted in the mainstream. And it's because we psychologically have a reaction when we see that an idea has become popular with a lot of people. And so the internet creates a circumstance where you can activate that subconscious instinct in people to accept something without ever actually having 23% of the population, because you can make it look like 23, 24, 25% of the population believes something. And I think that's one of the big reasons why Twitter fought so hard to prevent Elon Musk from finding out how many of the accounts on Twitter were fake people, because that's been their power this whole time, was to try to make it look like the leftist perspective of the extreme was far more popular than it ever was. And I say this last election should have been a wake-up call, to people to recognize that no, actually, your ridiculous extremist point of view is not as popular as you thought. But anyway, so.
Well, we're kind of running a little low on time. I'm getting kind of tired myself, but I want to finish up here. We both have had some influence on the trial in our own way. And I know that you talked about this a little bit earlier, but I thought it would be nice to kind of remind everybody that we had some roles to play. I mean, when the before the trial was getting underway, there was a poster named Orca Nut who went through a lot of trouble to take all of these various videos and sync them time-wise and timestamp them all. And I was online talking to him and I said, dude, you need to share this with the defense. They need this. And he said, well, I
Mhm.
don't know how to do that. I said, well, one thing you could do is, maybe file a friend of the court deal, but then it turns out that he wasn't eligible to do that. So I actually hunted down the contact information for Richards, and I sent it to Orkanut. And the next thing I know, they're playing that video in the trial. It was the
Right.
actual video footage that you saw during the trial was Orkanut's video that I got him to submit. So, I mean, not a big deal, but I kind of like the idea that I had some role to play, but you had a much bigger role, I think. You want to go ahead and describe that?
Oh, a few different things. They didn't know who Zeminski was before I brought.
Oh, that's right. You and Zeminski really went at it at one time.
Yeah, they didn't know who he was, and they didn't know, like, they hadn't tracked it down. And I want to be clear, I didn't do all that work by myself. There were people that were in Anonymous who did all of the work of figuring out who he was and then finding, of all things, his Pornhub account, a bunch of other stuff, and to understand, because Orkanut is kind of in the same category of person. A lot of people at Anonymous are not motivated specifically by activism. They're motivated by the challenge of being able to get that kind of information. And so I was getting information from people who were involved in Anonymous that I used a lot. And one of them was identifying Zeminski, but they had no idea who he was. Like, they just, oh, okay, there's a guy with a pistol. Like, they didn't look at the video and put it all together the way that other people had. Other than that, I'm trying to remember. I called Shifarasi and talked to him once.
I remember. I was going to bring that up because I remember we kind of went through that whole deal. Go ahead.
Yeah, and it was about Binger lying and claiming that Rosenbaum had never interacted with Kyle Rittenhouse before the shooting. And like, no, that's not true. Kyle was there. And I happen to have the clip of Kyle being maybe, I don't know, 5 or 6 feet away when Rosenbaum was, getting up and saying, like, don't threaten a female in front of me or something like that. It's when he was standing there with his shirt over his head with his chain. And it's over by one of the buildings. In fact, it probably was the building Dom was standing on top of, but that was another one of the things I did. And Linwood.
I'm sorry to interrupt, but I'd like to make a YouTube shorts out of that. If you could send me the source, if you still have it, I'd like to do a shorts video on that.
I'd have to look into that. It's been a long time. I used to.
Did you also call Shirafasi about the whole deal with, did Kyle point the gun at Zeminski or not? I thought, or maybe it was Logical Checkmate.
Well, we both did videos about that. I think Logical Checkmate's videos.
I think Paul actually called Shirafasi and let him know that that whole deal, the confirmation bias, was leading everyone to think that Kyle was pointing the rifle at Zeminski when actually his right hand was mistaken for the glare off of a rearview mirror, off of a vehicle behind him.
Right.
And that, by the way, drove me crazy. The video that they tried to use, the prosecution tried to use to show that Kyle was pointing the rifle at Zeminski, is a fantastic example of confirmation bias. If you think that's what's happening, you see it. But then when you see the drone rise up, you realize, oh, that's not his hand at all. And it turns out that no, the gun is pointing to the bottom left. Kyle never pointed the rifle at Zeminski, certainly not at that time.
Right. Yeah, and then the other thing is that the angle in question would have made him like a left-handed person. Like,
yeah, and he would also been pointing up at the treetops. I mean, really, right. I mean, it was so stupid. But I did a video on that where I broke that down and showed that no, that's not what happened at all. But Binger tried to nail Kyle with that video, and it was so dishonest.
Mm-hmm. No, I agree. Yeah, that's definitely the case. So, thank you for inviting me on for this conversation. I hope
glad to have you on. You always ask some great questions.
Bring some more light to this. It's been a while. I was actually just contemplating about coming back recently. So, like I said, to those people listening, what I may do also is starting to do like a round table, just like grab random people and just talk about current events. Because people ask for my perspective, but I don't want to just do it all by myself. Maybe you guys will get to hear from my son. He's pretty smart. My daughter used to actually moderate when I was doing all my trial chat room stuff. She'd probably be willing to come on, and being told, great to hear your voice again. Yes, V Radio, the Bob Ross of activist journalism. Used to get comments on my voice, but yeah, somebody said I sound like I have a cold. Something is trying to take hold on me right now, but I'm okay. Just a little decongested, but anyway, thanks again, Johnny, and I look forward to hearing how things go with you, and I'll be in touch. I'll be around.
Okay, thanks for coming on, and thanks for bringing all of your subscribers on. I really appreciate it, and they asked some great questions. I want to thank everybody for tuning in, and hope you enjoyed this. It was great to hear Dominic's side of the story of what's happening with him. Like I say, he's played it very low after the trial, and so we haven't really heard much from him. And it was really, really good to hear from him.
Yep. I had somebody in my chat recently say they thought I was dead. No, guys, I'm not dead. I just took a hiatus. I didn't die, so you're good.
All right. One last time, V Radio YouTube channel. Go and subscribe. He's got a lot of great content. Go and subscribe to the Johnnie Walker Dread Show. I'd really appreciate it. Also, if you hit the like button here, that helps us.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And let's see, a little bit. Any last comments here from the Peanut Gallery? Okay. Yeah, I agree. And let's see what else we got. Oh yeah. Hey, no problem. We've been supporters of Dominic pretty much all this time, and we understand what it must be like as much as we can. Of course, neither of us have experienced what he's going through, but at least we try to understand what it's like. And, it was really nice to be able to hear from him. Okay. Thanks everybody. I appreciate it. And until later, see you around.